support and advice on how best to present your experience to date. And then, if and when you get to the exciting interview stage, kind of some hints and tips to kind of support and best get yourself through that practice as well. So, throughout the session, we will kind of be speaking and kind of going through our examples and things to share, but we will have a few kind of Q&A sessions as well. So if you do have any questions, we can ask at that time. But, if there is anything that comes up and you're, oh, I might forget, just shout and we'll go over it. All right.
Good stuff. Okay, so I thought we'd start off with some kind of 5 myths about good CV writing. So, fun fact, recruiter will usually make an assessment whether or not they're going through your CV within the first 9 seconds of looking at your CV. So that's quite a scary concept. So instantly you want to be noticed and have the right information to put your best foot forward, okay? So we're going to start off with 5 myths. So 5 things that people think they should put in their CV that actually is not necessary. So any ideas on the top of your head if you think something that you shouldn't be putting on your CV that a lot of people do? Any ideas from anyone in the audience? Yes, that is genuinely number 1. Well done. So, 5 you. Interview coming your way. But yeah, with a photograph, it's a strange one because it seems to be a recent trend that we have, but for some reason it puts a lot of hiring managers off. Again, you want the information on your CV to be concise as possible, and essentially, as beautiful as you all are, it's more so about the information than what you can provide. So advice would be, for the picture, just leave that off your CV, okay? Another one is the address. Now, again, it might seem a strange thing, what would be wrong with putting your address down? There's nothing wrong with it per se, but again, it's additional information that in those first 9 seconds when they're assessing your information, that it's excess things they don't need to deal with, okay? So what might be worthwhile is that you can put, for example, see you reside in Aberdeen, just Aberdeen, but don't bother putting down your street or your street name or anything like a postcode. Either completely leave it blank or at least just put other Stonehaven, Aberdeen, something like that, just to keep it nice and concise and keep it down to a minimum. Your personal statement. How many of you have written a personal statement before? Has everyone done that before? Yeah? How did you find it? Tricky? Yeah, it's another tricky one in the sense of you want it to be short. I think a lot of mistakes we see, again, it's about getting the maximum information across in the smallest amount of lines possible. Because I think so many people will write these wonderfully written, like it's not a case of the content, but they're wonderfully written, but massive A4 pages of information that's just not going to be read. If you think about it, as some of you alluded to over here, when you've had an application, you could be against 2,000 applicants. So the recruiter hasn't got time to read 2,000 massive essays about why you should do the job. So if they see a big information, not ourselves personally, we like to be professional in that sense, but a lot of times people who haven't got enough time will go, I haven't got time to read that, and it goes into the pile. So with personal statement, my biggest advice would be, obviously using your buzzwords, apologies. Also looking at the job description. So a lot of times when you're applying to a job, have your base in the sense of this is your CV that you work from, but your personal statement, look at what they want. So look at the words that they are looking for, look at the skills that they want, and how can you personally put that across, okay? So it's really important to tailor that. So not just copy and paste, of course, kind of put your own personal flavor on it, and you want to give your personality as well. But a big thing as well is just to make sure you're tailoring that to the job you're applying for. Layout and length, I've kind of obviously alluded to this already, but that's another big one. Again, just to kind of hammer it home, if you take one thing back today, keep it concise, okay? So regards to layout, we'll be going through a handout later on. We've got a VQR. Has everyone got a smartphone here, or can you get into pairs as well? We'll go over that in a bit, but we'll scan it across and give you an example of some things to go through of your CV and give you some pointers there a bit more specific. And last but not least, referring to yourself in the third person, okay? That's a very common thing we see. Has everyone done that in their CV? I can see your body eye contact over there. Yeah. Just speak to us. Speak as if you're having a conversation. Think of it the same way. Like, it kind of makes you seem more robotic and less personal. I think if you're speaking to it, speak as if you're speaking to that person as if they're in front of you, because that's at the end of the day what you want to achieve. So that'll be my 5 myths. So if you're good, leave them off your CV, you're off to a good start. And then I'll pass over to Hannah for 5 things you should be doing. Yeah, go ahead. Of course, yeah. So just regards to referring to yourself in the third person. So instead of Craig is a motivated and I am. So you are speaking directly to them. Does that make sense? Yeah, no problem at all.
Okay, so I will be going over 5 things that recruiters look for in a CV, so not just ourselves, but hiring managers are obviously looking to recruit for a vacancy that they've got available at their company. So I think a big thing to do is make sure that the information that's going on your CV is true. And I think this can slightly relate to what Craig was speaking about in terms of tailoring your CV. So, it is so important when you're looking at maybe the job specification that is up for that vacancy, and they've maybe got those buzzwords that Craig was talking about, yeah? Absolutely. If you feel you relate to that, if you feel you are, whatever that buzzword might be, give me a buzzword.
Hardworking.
If you feel you're well, I hope everyone's hardworking, but if you feel you are hardworking, put it down. But what you don't want to do is say something that you aren't or don't feel relates to you, because the last thing you want to do is put yourself across as someone, perhaps get to an interview stage, perhaps even get past the interview stage and actually get into that position. And then you start and they're thinking, this isn't what they said they were on the CV, So you want to make sure you can actually relate and be that person that you're putting yourself forward as. So make sure, the information that you're putting down is true. It is you. It's who you are, what you're representing about yourself, but also accurate. So what we'll find a lot of the time is, particularly when you're going into these, bigger oil and gas companies, if you're looking to move into that renewable sector, a lot of these companies will do background checks. And what comes with that is nothing bad. They're not trying to say you're some sketchy person coming in, but it's just the typical procedure that their company does. And part of that, and what sometimes people can be caught out in, is that they've put on their CV, I'm a marketing manager. Whereas actually they were just a marketing assistant. They were trying to, make sure that what they were saying sounded really good. And maybe that's what they felt they were doing. Maybe the duties that they were doing were maybe marketer managing level. But if you were to actually go to the company and said, so Craig worked for you and says he was a marketing manager, is that true? And they'll say, well, no, he was a marketing assistant. Oh, right, okay. So you want to make sure that the information you're actually putting down is accurate, so that if these things are getting checked, they're being provided the right information. Because if they're getting something different, they'll be thinking, why is this person not telling me what's actually true? Particularly the same with dates. So make sure the dates that you're putting down are true and accurate. It is the day you started, it is the day you finished, because dates are, again, something that always get checked. And obviously, if you do have any gaps in your CV, which sometimes can be completely normal, maybe you just took some time out, maybe you went and traveled, maybe you were helping a sick family member. There's all of these different reasons as to maybe why you've taken some time out of work. But explaining that on your CV, just having like a little bit that says to why, sometimes indicates to the employer, okay, so they weren't just sitting about on the couch, for a couple of years watching Netflix, that sort of thing. There was something going on. And, even if you were sitting on the couch watching Netflix, that's totally fine. Say that, be open, be you. But yeah, just kind of having that information and explaining that, we always say, is a really good thing to do.
Well, just quickly, what Hannah alluded to there is, again, if you put down marketing manager, because that's felt what you were doing, obviously don't lie, but highlight that experience instead. So you could say, I was a marketing assistant, however, I carried out the duties as a marketing manager, and you can highlight that within your bullet point information underneath. That's the difference. Don't tell, obviously, highlight that experience if you felt you were doing it, but don't lie. That's the main thing.
Yeah. So yes, kind of going into the duty side of things, an explanation of your duties as opposed to just general jargon with regards to that line of work. And what I mean by that is, it can be really tricky if you're trying to really quickly kind of look at a CV, because obviously, as Craig mentioned, some applications can have thousands coming through. It's a lot for the hiring manager to go through. You want to make sure you've got things that stand out to the employer. But if they're looking at a CV and it's got pages and pages of duties that they've undertaken in a role, oh my goodness, that's overwhelming. That's too much. And if the information that's in the duties is a lot of kind of technical words with regards to that line of work, but you're not really actually explaining what you did, that can be really difficult to kind of decipher and understand. So yeah, when you're kind of writing your duties under the job that you've had, make sure it's kind of clear. You're kind of explaining it to someone as if they've never heard of that job before. But it's quite clear if someone was to look at it, right, okay, I understand what you actually did on a day-to-day basis. Does that make sense? Yeah. Another thing, what kind of Craig touched on, but it's fine. I won't beat on me yet. Is kind of tailoring your CVs to the vacancy. So again, as Craig said, using those buzzwords, keywords from the job specification or the job advert that they've got up is a good way to show the employer that you're really taking on board what they're looking for. And as I mentioned, obviously making sure that the information you are putting down still represents you and what you kind of stand for. Having accurate information, depending on the checks that they may be doing at whatever point, you want to make sure that you've made it clear what you've been kind of undertaking at whatever point. What I would say is, and what was kind of my next point actually, was transferable skills. And I know you'd mentioned it before, is that if you feel there was something you did in that role, though it maybe isn't relevant to what you're actually applying for, it's not directly the same kind of line of work, there's maybe something you did in that role that you feel can be transferred over. So it's good to highlight that at that stage nonetheless. And just outline, if you feel, maybe this isn't exactly what you're looking for in terms of this position, but I did X, Y, Z, and I feel that can be applied to this role,
And likewise as well, say for example, you've had 3 roles, and the role you're applying for, one of them is relevant, so very like for like, and the other 2 aren't. Prioritize, and so for example, say the most recent role is the one that is the most applicable to the one you're applying for. If you're going to have, it doesn't have to be equal. So say for example, you've got an A4 piece of paper and you're covering that with the 3 roles. The bulk of it can be the stuff that's relevant for that information, and then you can just tailor that in the sense of take out any unrelevant stuff, but just highlight the transferable skills. Does that make sense? So instead of the main part you're trying to get across is that you've done a role that's very similar, have that at the top. That's your kind of shining star. Thank you. And then obviously you can kind of take out the rest so that there's not as much information to digest for them, but at the same time it's highlighting the transferable skills. Yeah, so still keep everything chronological. So even if your most recent role isn't relevant, that's whatever is the most recent role, work that way and work your way down. I think what we're trying to say is that you, for example, the most recent role is, I don't know, you worked at McDonald's or something like that. That could be a very small section saying McDonald's, the job title you had, the date, and maybe 3 bullet points of the roles and responsibilities, whereas maybe perhaps the one before is more relevant and which you'd have more information. So still keep it chronological and work your way back from there. But at the same time, you can just kind of tailor how much information you provide about the irrelevant roles, if that makes sense. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, and then the last thing that I was kind of keen to make sure, it maybe seems like an obvious one, but I think it really just ensures to ourselves or employers or whoever it is that's looking at your CVs that you're really giving it the attention and detail that it needs, but it's proofreading your CV. Even if it's not yourself, because I know myself, when doing my own CV, I could look at that thing, 20 times. And I'll think, yeah, that's perfect. I've done such a good job. I'm amazing at this. And then someone else will read it and they'll be like, Hannah, you misspelt, your own name. And, all of these things. And you're like, oh, crikey, I didn't even realize. So even just passing on to a friend, a family member, someone that you've got nearby that can just quickly read it for you and say, okay, all looks good. Again, like I say, it seems like quite a minor thing probably, but you'll really notice it. And it's something that I know ourselves will always pick up on, these little things. Because for me, I personally work within the office support team. So I handle a lot of administrators and things like that. And, that's their bread and butter. That's what they're doing on a day to day. And if they're misspelling words, I'm like, oh, that's meant to be your job. You're meant to be looking out for these things, these grammatical errors, things like that. So yeah, just keep an eye out. If you've got someone that can give a quick read over, we'd always recommend that you can do that as well.
I think it's also what the spelling mistake represents. If you haven't made the effort to make sure that one thing that we have to judge you for is immaculate, then is that going to transcend into how you work? It might be a bit of a reach, but that's how people think as well. So yeah, 100% a big point.
Yeah, so at this point, have you got your one, Craig?
Excuse me, Craig.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, my question is, I'm sure a lot of people are thinking the same thing. Sometimes you're thinking of how can I get into a particular role.
Mm-hmm.
So you might be willing to take a lower position just to get in. What's your take on that? What would be the best way to get yourself in the door? Maybe position yourself in terms of tailoring your CV.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe in previous organizations or where you're coming from, you were in you're in a higher position, but because you want to get into an industry or you just want to get in, you're willing to take maybe a junior role. Mm-hmm. So what do you have to say about that?
I think at that point, it's really just, you can mention in the likes of a personal statement, obviously we've said you don't want to bombard it with information, but even just one sentence that's kind of saying, look, appreciate my previous roles or maybe at a managerial level, whatever that might be. For me, where I'm at now, I'm just looking to kind of put my foot forward, take a step into that line of work, into that industry, into that set, whatever it might be. And I'm willing to kind of come in at a junior level and work my way up. And, for an employer that's looking at that, they're thinking, all right, okay, so though they have all this experience, they're not planning to come in and act as if they are the manager and have, they know better or whatever that might be. They actually are looking at this. They're realizing it is a junior position. They know what's implicated with that role, and they're willing to take that step into that kind of more junior level and build their way up. And that's certainly what I recommend anyway, when I'm kind of dealing with people that are going into that line of work anyway.
It's showing that willingness to learn. It's, I think sometimes when you've held a manager title, some of the apprehension from an employer might be, well, if they're coming in junior, the second they get another opportunity, they're just going to go because they've got the management experience. I think it's making it very clear that I understand that I'm in a position to learn. I have got, for example, if you had no UK experience or a role in the UK, I've never done this before here. I want to learn from you. I have researched your company. Your company I want to work for, I want to learn from you and I want to grow with you as a company because, again, every time someone's hired, it's an investment from that company. If they are going to ingest time into you for training or teaching you the ways of how things are done, etc., that's all time and money. And if you can highlight that, no, this isn't a stepping stone for me, I want to learn and grow with you as a business, that's a huge way to do it as well.
But while we're doing this Q&A, I'm going to quickly pass around this QR code. If you guys can scan that, this is going to take you to the next section of our talk. Here we go. Just pass it around.
Just pass it around, that'd be great. Sorry, go for it.
Okay, so I just need what's your take on this? I've had some feedbacks where the recruiter said your CV looks more like it's more task based rather than what you accomplished on the job. So my question is, the CV is supposed to show what I achieved in that particular role, or is it supposed to detail my JD?
Are you trying to highlight the experience you've already done or what you're trying to achieve? Is that what you mean, or?
Okay, so let me put it this way.
Sure.
I applied for a financial controller role because that's what I've done, back home.
Sure.
And then the recruiter was telling me okay, the way I did my CV is just saying my JD.
It's just highlighting your job description as what you did previously. Okay.
I achieved on the job, maybe as a financial controller, I was able to reduce.
Sure. We are going to get into a bit that will maybe highlight a little bit easier for you, but it's sometimes something you can separate. So obviously the roles and responsibilities is a section where is what it says on the tin is your roles and responsibilities, but you can have a separate section being, whether it be beneath your personal statement, you can have kind of achievements, and therefore you can put in specific examples of that. Or alternatively, within each role, if you think you've got achievements and roles and responsibilities, put both. There's no reason why you can't put, here's my roles and responsibilities, and then another subsection of key achievements within this role were consistent of X, Y, and Z. Does that make sense?
So another question I have there is, wouldn't that make the CV look I mean, I don't know how the CV will look point size if I'm doing all of that. So it's like contradicting what you said earlier.
No, but I think what it is if that is the main information you want to portray, is there anything else you could take out? Don't cut information out for the sake of it just to make something concise, but prioritize. I think that's maybe what we're trying to put across is if that role that you've done most recently is your best piece of evidence as to why you're suitable for the role you're applying for, that is the main thing you can focus on. You can write about that until the cows come home. If the information before that isn't as relevant, that's where you make that sacrifice and take that out instead, if that makes sense. So I guess it's prioritizing the information you want them to see. So as I said over here, if you have a role, for example, that isn't as relevant, you could literally just have the job title, the dates, the role you held, and literally 2 or 3 sentences, whereas opposed to the role that you want to highlight showing, I have done this, I've toned to this, I've achieved this, that's the one you can write and do a larger piece on. So I appreciate what you're saying about being concise and kind of keeping it short and to the point, and we absolutely stand by that, but at the same time, highlight the most important thing, and if that is your biggest selling point, then sell it.
And what I would say to that, just to quickly touch on it, is what I'd mentioned earlier. In terms of your duties, don't make it look like a job description, in the sense of don't be using the kind of jargon and lingo that would come with that. You want to make sure that when you're explaining what the duties were, you're actually saying what you did on a day-to-day that's clear and understandable for someone reading it, as if they don't work in that line of work, right? So, okay, I understand this is what they did. It's not just someone that would look at that and only they would understand because only they have worked in that type of line of work, you know? So don't just copy and paste a job description and put that down as your duties. Make sure that you're actually writing, you know, if you think, right, when I went in on Monday, what did I do? What was my process throughout the day? What did I actually tackle? What did I accomplish throughout the day? You write that. And then that's what Craig is saying. So you can have those few bullet points explaining what your duties were. And then if you did achieve something, maybe you did something really good while you were in that position, you want someone to know about that. You want to highlight that. Underneath, you can then have the achievements bit with a couple of bullet points, a bullet point of, okay, look what I did when I was in that. You know, look how good that is. That's kind of what we're looking for. Obviously, only if it's relevant to what you're applying for. That sort of thing.
I think as well, it's adding that humanity to it as well. Sometimes we get job descriptions from companies that make the job sound very dull, very boring, and doesn't kind of bring it to life. Whereas if you have personally done that and you are a human being, you can kind of inject a bit of life into it and a bit of passion as how you felt doing the role, if that makes sense. Yeah, I think that's important as well, because so many job descriptions are so dull. They're so dull, and if that's your CV, then you don't want that to carry over, you know.
Craig's just trying to wake you up a little bit. You got a question? Yeah?
No, just a follow-up comment.
Yeah.
I know you all answered the question, but just to pass across like something I understood based on his question. The way I understood it, I know that's basically what you said, but the way I understood it was I tried to use the STAR system on my CV. A modified version of the STAR system, meaning, you know, like situation, the task, the action, and the result. Every other thing outside that is Java, in a way. It may not, it may not really follow for every, every job dimension or every job role, but a lot of times, if you have that thought process while making your CV there, it will help to highlight the results of what you do.
I feel like you've come and read our piece of paper. You might as well come up and give this talk. You know what you're talking about. We will be touching base on that in due course, so we can speak a little bit more on that if you do have any questions, but that's a very good and valid thing to bring up for sure. Aha, here we go. Perfect. So this is a CV template, we should call it, that we have up, and if you guys are on your phone, you'll see that it's there. So this is kind of along the lines of what Craig and I have been speaking about in terms of what's probably your best or kind of go-to template for your CV. So as we mentioned, you've got your name, city, location. So again, you don't need to go into full detail as to I live on 72 George Street, Aberdeen, whatever that might be. Just Aberdeen is fine. Then your contact number and email address. And then what we've done is kind of added a little bit of an explanation as to what you could put there. So as we've said, you might be tempted to add graphics and images, but we advise against this. And this is because if you're trying to put it onto a portal, like upload your, there's all these portals that you can put on if you're applying for a role or whatever that might be, it can make it go a little funky. And it can kind of distort the template and layout of your CV. And that's the last thing you want. If you spent all that time trying to make it look good and then you put it on and, oh my goodness, it's all over the place, you're thinking, oh, well, that was a waste of time. So yeah, try to avoid adding any graphics and images. And then, yeah, kind of simply save it and begin creating your own CV. So personal statement, as we've spoken about, this is your chance to sell yourself, pick the best working attributes and relate them to the job you're applying for. So exactly what Craig and I were talking about. Apply what's in the job description to yourself. This is the place where you can highlight those bits about you. Try to avoid the basic terms like trustworthy or hardworking. What did Craig say earlier? What was his buzzword? Hardworking. I knew it. Typical. Don't use it. Everyone's hardworking, of course. So yeah, try and avoid words like that. Do something that's really going to make you stand out from the crowd. Keep your personal statement concise. A short paragraph, which is approximately this length, would work well. So yeah, about 3 sentences is more than enough for you to kind of clearly get across who you are and how you're good for this role, basically. Employment history, very self-explanatory. The name of the company, what you did, the dates you were doing it, your duties and responsibilities, and the achievements. This is exactly what we were meaning in terms of you can separate the two, have your duties and responsibilities. That is what you did in the job. This is what you came in day to day, Monday to Friday. This is what I did. And then achievements. If you did anything really good that you really want to highlight to the employer, pop it down. They're obviously going to want to know about that. And if you're not going to get the opportunity to maybe get to the interview stage, that's how you go about doing it, is to really highlight that from the get-go. Don't wait until, they might meet me, so I'll mention it then. No, do it straight away. Yeah. And then IT experience. So some of these kind of vacancies that you might be applying for, they might need some sort of system experience, something you've maybe used before. Again, really good to highlight that just to show that you have an understanding or working knowledge of being able to use that. Education and qualifications. So this one, in terms of layout on your CV, Craig and I, for the vacancy, the kind of jobs that we handle, typically we would put the education towards the top. So this would come before your kind of work experience. I know particularly in Craig's field, with the kind of QHSEA background and things, a lot of those qualifications are really key and important to the line of work that you'll be going into. So it's really good that from the get-go, employers have a good understanding and knowledge that you have maybe a qualification within that area. But for some, it's not as important. So, I mean, it's down to yourselves at that point in terms of preference if you'd want to put that before or after. But typically, if your qualifications are relevant to the job that you're applying for, I'd put it before your work experience.
Sometimes on a job description, it might say at the bottom minimum requirements. If it has, for example, with QHSE, you need an ISO 9001 lead auditor qualification. Obviously, you cannot get this job without that. So therefore, that's when the education starts. Sometimes it just takes it off, so they go, okay, they've got that, they've got that, they've got that. Okay, let's see what they've done. So the specific qualifications that are vital to the job, especially if it says on the job description of you cannot have the job without having this, then definitely get that at the top. And you want them to know as soon as possible.
Yeah. Finally, little things for the hiring employer to get to know you a little bit better. Hobbies and interests, always a good one. Again, don't go the standard, the boring. Oh, I like to watch Netflix. This is my go-to example. I'm so sorry, I have nothing else, but it's actually because that is me. I don't actually do anything else. But yeah, hobbies and interests, make it something fun, something exciting. Obviously, that if you don't have that, that's fine. Don't make up things that you enjoy, but something a little bit maybe quirky about yourself, a fun fact.
Example, this group here. This is something very unique. It's something very community-based. There's so many things that evidence the fact that you're a part of this. You're a part of a team, you work together, all these things. It's something you're passionate about. And it kind of says something about your character. So if you want to talk about something interesting, unique that not many people are going to have, talk about this group. I mean, it's a huge one for you guys.
Yeah. And then, I don't know if we're able to get the document scrolled down a little bit. There we go. Finally, References. So it's so easy to share documents electronically that your CV could end up almost anywhere. So we would advise against including referee details. So this is a big one, particularly with things like GDPR, data protection. You don't want to always go out there and share details that people maybe aren't 100% comfortable with everyone having. So what we'd advise is that you can just put they're available on request, something along those lines, indicating that you do obviously have people that they can reach out to should they wish to. But yeah, we'd kind of advise against putting their details directly on the CV, just because, like I say, you never know where that might be going and getting shared with, and you kind of you don't want that. But yeah, that is what we would say is kind of an ideal CV layout. The length as well, obviously you'll be adding in a couple of bits here and there, but generally speaking, that's probably a good go-to to go for.
That is on our website, so when you come up with something on the download section, so if you want to start fresh, like you can say,
we do have a couple of other documents available on the download section as well, including a recruiter's guide to improving your CV. So this is kind of along the lines of what Craig and I have already been speaking about today, but it's just all there clear and concise for you guys to access, should you wish to do so. We've got a recruiter's guide to writing your personal statement. Obviously, we completely appreciate this can be really tricky for some people. Others have everything that they want to say about themselves, 100%. I know who I am. I know what I can say. But some people maybe not so much. And yeah, that's a good way to kind of maybe get a bit of an idea as to what to include, maybe what to say. Write a CV with an impact, which is also kind of a formatted template for you to have a look and see, again, maybe how to kind of lay it out, what to include, all that good stuff. And then the last, one that is kind of relevant to today is a recruiter's guide to preparing for an interview. So we are just a way to kind of touch base on the interview side of things, in terms of the best way to kind of prepare for that. But again, it's another document for you guys to access, just to take a look. All right.
Before we move on to interviewing, is there any other specific questions?
We had this debate. Good question.
So I think the generic kind of go-to is 2 pages. So that's the kind of across the board, but it really depends on how far in your career you are. Obviously, if someone is 5 years into a working life, it's much easier for them to condense that into 2 pages. However, say for example, you've been working for 30 years, how on earth you're going to get that into 2 pages is going to be very difficult. Obviously, you can take out some of the stuff earlier on, but I would say 2 pages is a good starting point, and probably a push 3. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and again, this is exactly just leading back to what we were saying before in terms of keeping the information that's on the CV as relevant as possible. You know, if you're applying to something, don't have something you did, when you were 16 and you were working just kind of part-time during school or whatever, whatever that situation might be. Yeah, absolutely, you can include that, but don't go into great detail. I mean, I don't know how much you'll have been doing at the age of 16, but I know for me, I was just working in a coffee shop, so there's only so much I can say about making coffees and giving people a panini. So yeah, only so much detail to include for that, but again, we're just kind of reiterating the same things. Make sure that the information you are putting is relevant. The most important things are what is giving the most, space on your CVs. So hopefully that way you shouldn't be then led with a kind of 7-8 page document. It is kind of shorter to the 2 to 3. Does that help?
Okay, so we were going to go over we'll do a Q&A at the end, but obviously, again, if anyone has any questions before, just go for it. Some of the more tricky questions to answer. So the tell me about yourself question.
Everyone's favorite.
Everyone's favorite. Tell me about yourself. Is that a difficult one you guys struggle with? Do you guys know how to answer this? Is something assuming everyone's been asked this question, what's your thoughts? Is that something you guys struggle with, or a bit awkward? You don't know where to start, or is that something you're quite happy? Yeah, happy enough. Confident man here. I like it. So for those of you that would maybe struggle, I think it's essentially getting the balance between your professional and personal life. So within that question, you want to highlight your professional experience, and you also want to personalize what makes you different as a human being. So it's also about, I guess, every question should be indirectly showing how you can add value to that company. So if you say, you know, even something, if you think you're funny, you know, I can lighten up any team. I can kind of, you know, it's highlighting that's something about you. If you think you're a funny guy and you can bring light and joy into a room, highlight that. Absolutely, why not? Like for me personally, so again, the balance between professional and personal life. So personally, I would give a brief summary of my professional experience, and then I would then tie into my personal life from there. So, for example, you could say, you know.
So, well, I'll just ask Craig the question. So, Craig, tell me about yourself.
Well, Hannah. So, my name's Craig Fletcher. I've grown up in Aberdeen my whole life. I left school, went into a retail environment and worked up my way up to being a manager. At that point, decided it wasn't the future for me, but I decided that I wanted to go into a sales environment as I felt that my strengths were teamwork and I was very forthcoming and confident and enjoyed interacting with people. I did this role for a few years and then decided that one of my passions when I was younger is I wanted to be a police officer. So I made a big career change. I was a police officer for 7 years. At that point, once I'd kind of ticked it off my bucket list, I wanted to move back into a corporate environment and kind of use my main strengths. So again, I feel like I'm a people person. I understand people. I know what makes them tick. So I went into recruitment. In my personal life, I have 2 dogs, and I have a partner that lives at home where I enjoy hiking, and I was a martial artist and kickboxing champion when I was a kid. So that, again, it shows skills, highlights, a brief career summary, what makes me different, and then a little bit of my hobbies as well. Does that make sense? How old do you think I am? How old do you think I am? 45!
Oh, dear Lord.
How
Craig.
very dare you?
The police aged him.
I'm a vampire. I don't age. No, I've just turned 30, but I left school when I was 17. I didn't go to university. So obviously I've had that bit more of a time to be in the working environment, hence the unyouthful skin. Thank you. Okay, so that's a little bit about kind of telling me about yourself. Another big one, why should we hire you? It obviously puts you so much on the spot, doesn't it?
It does. It's a really tricky one. I struggled myself to answer this, to be honest.
So, reassuring skills for the role, passion for the position, ability to succeed. So, I guess, why should we hire you? What makes you different? What's going to make you stand out, I guess? So, obviously, because I want to get paid. That's not an answer.
I need the money.
I need the money. That's the truth, but so it's ensuring you have the skills for a role. So again, you think about you've applied, okay, say you're a police officer. What do you need to be a police officer? What does that role entail? What makes a good police officer? And therefore highlighting those transferable skills that you have that make that applicable, if that makes sense. So I personally feel, again, let's not use hardworking, but I feel like my main attributes is I'm a people person, and I think that's a vital part of being a police officer. So that's what I highlighted in that interview. Does that make sense? Yeah. Again, passion for the position. So yeah, everyone wants the role, but why? Like you think about the kind of the company and the values, and you've aligned and you see yourself moving up in this position. Again, you're an investment. If they hire you, you're an investment of time, of money, of training, all these things. So you don't see this as, oh, it's a paycheck. This is, I am invested in you so you can invest in me.
Well, that's it. I mean, Craig asked me the question.
Hannah, why should we hire you?
Well, I'll tell you. I'll use this example for the job I'm in now. So as a recruitment consultant, I was asked this exact question when I went for my interview, actually by the CEO of the company, which was a delightful experience. But my kind of response to that is, why should we hire you? Well, for me, people have always been at the center of every single thing that I do. My background maybe isn't recruitment, because this is true, it isn't. But I have come from an industry and background where people are always there. You're always trying to support, help, deal with. It's people will always be what makes the world go round. And so to come into a position where on a day-to-day basis, I can actually come in and help people in whatever shape that might be, getting them a job, helping them with their CV, coming out to do things like this, that is what gets me through the day. And who wouldn't want to be in a job where they actually love what they do? So to actually be able to come in at the end of my day, from my work day, tell my boyfriend, oh, you'll never guess what, I got someone a job, and it's the joy that you get from that, the passion that I have for helping people and being there to support. is just immense. So you should hire me because you know I'm going to come in every day. I'm going to give it my absolute all. Yes, maybe I haven't done recruitment before, but I love dealing with people. I've always had people experience, and I will be there to support, you know?
I'm going to cry. Filling up here. Okay, so another one just to very quickly highlight is, I touched on this before, but most companies have values. So on their website, they'll have their company values. It's not a bad idea to try and align. It's great if your values align with the company's, and you can highlight that because they love that. The more research you do into a company, the more you can tell them about them. They're going to love that. Obviously, they want to feel special. You want to feel special. It's a symbiotic experience. So if you can align your values and make reference to their values within your kind of that question, that's a really, really good way to go as well. The last awkward question that we think that a lot of people say is, tell me about your weaknesses. So how are you asking me?
What are you talking about? I have none.
I have no weaknesses. Drop the mic. But I think it's a really tricky thing because it's asking you to talk about something negative with an interview when you're trying to give all your best foot forward. So like, what does that look like? So it goes very obvious, but obviously turn a negative into a positive. So if your weakness is, I despise humanity, you're probably not going to tell them that. You know what I mean? That's not going to help sell you. So what can you do that you can twist into a positive? It's also showing self-awareness and how you're working towards rectifying it. So there's two ways you can do it. So for example, I don't know.
Yes.
So if you were to ask me,
Craig, what are your weaknesses?
My weaknesses. So I could say some of the lines of, so start off as it is a negative, but how it is also twisted into a positive. For example, I am a perfectionist. I tend to overanalyze and it impacts my output. So this can be viewed as a positive. So he's a perfectionist. So he's working really hard. He's trying to do this. He cares about what he's doing. And then showing the self-awareness. So again, twisted to positive. So although I'm actively working to rectify this through kind of being less analytical with myself, while still maintaining a high standard of work, if that makes sense. So again, perfectionist, you think, well, that's not a negative, but I can show because of the output, and then twisting it around at the end, say, but I'm actively working it, showing that self-awareness, so something you can turn around. So let's get a bit interactive. Can you give me an example of if I asked you a weakness, what could you turn it around? So can anyone think of something? A weakness that you have that you can turn to a positive? Anyone? You're on the spot. Go for it.
Yeah, so something like taking too much responsibilities and which tends affect your output. So you've learned to minimize the amount of responsibility you decide to take so as to do things properly, and also learn to prioritize your work.
Perfect.
Which helps to improve your output.
Exactly. A really, really good example. And again, you're showing that self-awareness. Again, taking on responsibility. Everyone wants someone's going to work hard. So again, you've highlighted that you're going to work hard, but you're showing self-awareness of how you can rectify that and counteract it as well. So a brilliant answer. Really good. Anyone else? Weaknesses that you have? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Weakness is the fact that when a team member is not pulling their weight, it tends to affect me. So most times I find myself, being interested in that team member, and I just don't want to let them go. So sometimes it does affect me and makes me go, over and above, even beyond what I'm supposed to do. But my thing is, I can't just let this team member like that because we're as weak as our weakest team member. So I just want to drag them along.
Perfect answer. Really, really good. Yeah, generally 100%. No complaints there. It's the showing you're a team player, showing you're supportive, showing that you're willing to kind of mentor and bring people on. And again, it's that negative into a positive, constantly thinking how can I turn this around. So that's a really good answer. Thank you.
I would just say, with that, obviously your feeling is that you're trying to support people that maybe aren't pulling their weight. Is that right?
Well, yeah. So maybe because of my role.
Yeah.
So as a Scrum Master, I'm a servant leader, and it's all about the team. So when you have a team member not pulling their weight, sometimes it bothers you, and then you find yourself being interested. So you want to do everything to ensure that person, you're able to carry them along, even when it's not convenient, and even when you feel like, I should be doing something else, and then you find yourself involved. So most times, it could affect you, but then you still want to, be interested and help the person the best way you can until you are no longer able to help.
Yeah. So I wouldn't even see that necessarily as a weakness. I think that's just you being a good leader more than anything. and really showing that you care about the people that are there and you're trying to support them the best that you can. So for yourself, yeah, kind of what we're saying is, if someone were to ask you that question, you said, well, my weakness is that maybe I spend a lot of time supporting people because they're maybe not, they're struggling or not kind of pulling their weight in this. It's about how can you make that a positive? Well, I've identified that there is an issue, and I've proactively gone out of my way to ensure that I'm supporting the best I can. No, though that has had an impact on me, whether that be for my own productivity, maybe I'm going above and beyond and I'm kind of burning myself out at this point because I'm doing more than I should be. It's about, right, well, what do you do to rectify that? Well, I'm ensuring that I'm now speaking with them. I'm having an open and honest conversation and saying, look, this is what you need to be doing. If you need support, please let me know and we can work through it together. But I would like you to try and give this a go. These are the things that you can do to try maybe do better in this or whatever that might be. And then that way you're showing that you're trying to help yourself at the same time, really, while helping someone else. Does that kind of answer your question? Yeah.
Good stuff. Okay, so we already alluded to over here, but we're going to talk about the star layout. So obviously, gold star over here, but has anyone heard of the star layout for answering questions? A way of formatting an answer and kind of you can take it off in your head. Anyone aware of that? Yeah. So again, the classic for those you don't know: situation, task, action, result. Okay, so prime example, there you go. Tell me about a time that you had a team member that wasn't pulling their weight. So the situation was, I work with a team of, I don't know how they are, say a team of 3 people, and one member of the staff was not being effective, and as such, work productivity was suffering. So I took it upon myself to find out whether this person, was it a will or a skill? So was it that they didn't have the training, or was it that they just weren't willing to work hard? Identified that they actually just weren't confident and they didn't have the skills and confidence to ask for when they needed help, and that was causing them to things not get done. As an action, I gave them, provided the appropriate training, so that therefore they increased their confidence and increased their productivity, and as a result, as a team overall, our productivity increased. So there's a prime example of something you could do, or I don't know, another one, tell me the time work as part of a team, these sort of things. It's the structure, situation. So laying out what has actually happened, the task. So what you're going to do to turn that around, how did you overcome it? The actions, what action you took, and then the result. As you have another one you can add on, so you can add a star with 2 R's, would be reflection. So perhaps what you would have done differently or what you would do now. So that's optional. You're not applicable to every question, but sometimes that reflection, again, shows that self-awareness and growth that you actually, on reflection, I think this went well, but we could have done this better. That's another good R at the bottom as well. Mm-hmm. So has everyone kind of done that before? Is that something everyone's aware of, or you kind of used that star layout before? Yeah, okay. And does it make sense? And it's just such an easy way for competency-based questions. That's how to lay them out. I appreciate you can't do that for some of the more closed questions, but for situational questions, that's what your kind of layout should always be, the STARR. Okay, perfect.
Any other questions or anything you're not sure about when it comes to kind of interview situation? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think it's about having a level of self-awareness there. I mean, if you feel like it's being as honest and open as you possibly can be, whilst also putting your best foot forward. But at the same time, it's reassuring yourself. Just because you haven't done it in the UK doesn't mean you haven't got the skills within that particular field, or also doesn't mean that you haven't got transferable skills as well. And reminding yourself that even if I don't know it, I'm willing to learn, I'm willing to work hard, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make it in that sort of role. So whilst I totally understand, I think everyone's had an element of imposter syndrome at some point. And even standing up in front of here, part of me is like, what gives me the right to tell you guys what to do and what to do? But again, it's that if you feel like you have something that you can add to this company, you have this genuine self-belief, and you think, actually, you know what, at the very start you were saying, how can we make a difference? Well, what does that look like for you? It's going to be unique for every person here. Everyone's different. Everyone's got different skills, abilities, and really thinking, well, what can I add? What value can I add? Whether it be, if you haven't got the experience, what can you grow? How can you contribute to the team? again, as we said, stupid things like, are you a people person? Can you cheer for team? Can you motivate people? That is what I can add. That's what I can do, and therefore, kind of just holding your head high and not being true to yourself, but just reminding yourself of everyone's special in their own different way. I know it's so cliched, but everyone is special in their own way. Everyone's got unique abilities, and it's you putting that foot forward and saying, I've got all this to offer, and just being proud of who you are.
Remember, you got there for a reason. You know, you're sitting
Exactly.
in that interview situation because they've seen something in your CV and in you. So at that point, don't doubt yourself. It's so easy for me to say, but it's really just believing in yourself in that moment and knowing, look, I'm here because they can see something in me and they can see something that I can do that will help them. And at this point, I just need to be showing them everything I can about how I can actually do that, you know?
But yeah, unless it is a charity, but it's not a charity. Like, they want something from you, and the fact that you're in front of them, as we say, most jobs are getting minimum 20 applications, and most of the time, the most interviews I've ever seen for a role was maybe 4. So if you think you've made that, those 9 seconds where you get 100 CVs get pushed into the bin, you've made it through that really harsh process. So you've stood out, you've done something special. So if you're sitting in front of someone, you've done something amazing, you've achieved something by just sitting there. So remind yourself of that too. Any other questions?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Yeah. I can't remember who it was, someone in the room we were speaking about before we got started, but I think there's a lot of exceptional circumstances happening at the moment, in that we had the oil downturn in 2016, which obviously so many skilled people lost their jobs. At that point, obviously things started to pick up, and then COVID came and everything came crashing down again. And again, once again, a lot of skilled people lost their jobs again. So now that things are starting to become more normal, companies are hiring again, and all of these people that are qualified are applying to roles as well. But it's a combination of what you said as well, is that oftentimes, we can get 20, 30, 40 applications to a role, and 20 aren't in any way qualified to do so. It's that kind of Hail Mary, throw the CV and just hope for the best sort of thing. So it's a combination of both, in the sense of that there's a lot of skilled people out of work, and unfortunately they're just trying to get in. That's making it so competitive. But at the same time, a lot of people are, we call it like the kind of the blanket drop approach, whereas rather than kind of tailing your search to, I want to do this is what I want, and I've got the skills to do X, Y, and Z, they just go, click apply, and just go down and click apply to everything and just hope something lands. And that kind of ruins it for everyone. But that's why you see this bloated sense of so many applicants. It's a combination of both of those factors, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, the market is really competitive at the moment for exactly what Craig had said. Not only you guys coming across and trying to get work here as well, but people that actually reside here too. Everyone is just trying to look for work at the moment, just because of everything that's gone on within the last few years. And so people that have maybe previously been in these positions before, maybe have the relevant qualifications, all of them are now trying to get back into that line of work, and it's just making it that kind of little bit extra of kind of difficulty for anyone just trying to get into those roles, because there is just that enormous amount of people trying to get in and trying to get work. There was a company that I'd spoken with that had received 351, I think, CVs for just an admin assistant position, and they felt so overwhelmed, and they were like, why am I getting so many? I know, why am I getting so many CVs coming through for this? And it's just because everyone and anyone is just trying to look for that role. And that's again why we were saying, make sure that what you're applying for, you actually truly want to do, you are qualified to do, have the experience to do, whatever it might be that you need to meet the requirements for that role, just so that you're actually making sure you're getting the best opportunity to be seen, and someone's not just looking at it and chucking it away elsewhere. But also on the opposite side, so that the people that are having to review it are actually reviewing applications that are suitable for them. And you'll find that you'll most likely get a better chance, because there's some people out there that say, oh, Hannah, I applied for 30 jobs yesterday. Okay, well, how many of them was actually relevant to what you want to do? 2? Okay, so actually you applied for 2 jobs that are actually suitable. The other 28, you're getting yourself all worked up over because you've not heard back. Well, you've not heard back because you're not
your
relevant.
time as well.
Yeah,
you not only
absolutely.
wasted the recruiter's time, but your own time. Think how much long it would take to process and do 30 different applications. If you don't waste your time, be more efficient with your time and apply to things that you actually want to do and you're qualified to do as well. And a lot of it is just trusting the process. It will just take time, and things will settle down. Obviously, the world's getting back to normal post-COVID now, so as a result, things will start to settle down, things will come back to normality, and things will get easier as well. To fill a role, yeah. Uh-huh. As in where is there a candidate shortage, as where the skills? Yeah, I mean, one thing that makes us not one-dimensional, but we do specialist recruitment. So I personally just look after QHSE, which is Quality, Health, Safety, Environment. Hannah looks after office support. So from my experience in my area, a big, massive candidate shortage now is in the environmental setting. There's very few skilled environmental advisors or coordinators or people with environmental degrees or geoscience, that sort of thing. That's such a really big shortage there. But as an overall generic, is there anything that you think were vacancies that are becoming increasingly difficult to fill, the work that people don't want to do?
I think a lot of things, to be honest. The market is, I think, part of what we're finding at the moment is there might be a lot of people looking for work, but there's a lot of uncertainty. Not everyone wants to commit to a role because they're not going to know if they're going to have it in 3 months. Not everyone wants to stay in maybe these lower kind of jobs, the more junior end. They want to be able to progress and do all these other things, but they need to remember they need to start somewhere and work their way up. There's a lot of factors that go into it. And yeah, though we are finding there are a lot of shortages, I think it's a mixture of just the general climate in the moment in terms of the COVID, cost of living, all of this good stuff. There's just a lot of not good stuff in that sense, but a lot of uncertainty with regards to that. And like I say, a lot of people looking to do more than what they really can do at that point. So a lot of people looking to aim for the stars, which is great, absolutely. But sometimes you do need to kind of come in at the beginning and work your way up. And then that can sometimes leave you with that shortage at the kind of entry level. It's okay. We are running low on time, so just this will maybe need to be the last one.
So be correct. The roles you are in now are not necessarily your background. Mm-hmm. So you transition.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, how did you even get a chance to even be called for an interview without that experience, I would say, that you need to be in this particular role you are. So think about it. Yeah. I want that job, but I necessarily do not have I have transferable skills, but I don't have, I've not done the role. Yeah. So how do I pass through?
This is all down to the position itself. So in terms of the line of work that we do, you don't need to specifically have a qualification in that. You don't need to specifically have a background in that. As long as you have relevant transferable skills, particularly our employer, they're a really progressive company in the sense that they're looking to support where they can, and they are open to profiles that are willing to come in and learn and commit themselves. Now, not every company is like that, and that's what we kind of want to stress at this point. Though it's brilliant that there are employers out there that can give people those opportunities and see something in their CV that can apply to what that job is. Not every single job and not every single company can afford to do that. Some jobs you will absolutely need to have a background in that, and that is something we really as recruiters need to emphasize a lot, unfortunately, with a lot of the roles that we deal with. When it comes to recruiters, we're more that middleman. It's the company that's hiring that overall have the requirements that they're looking for, and they'll come to us and they'll say they need to have a background in this, or they need to have a qualification in this. Otherwise, we just can't review the profiles. So it really just depends on what you're maybe looking to go into or what you're applying for. But sometimes it really just comes down to the fact that you just don't have the experience, and at that point that they're at, they need someone that has that. Again, there are some opportunities out there that don't always necessarily need someone to have a background or need someone to have experience, but someone that's open to willing to learn and kind of be there and support where they can and are able to identify those transferable skills.
Yeah, and kind of building from that, I 100% agree with everything you said. I guess sometimes it's getting in with that particular company. Say, again, I'll use QHSE because that's my background, but say, for example, you want to be a quality advisor within an oil and gas company, and they earn between £50,000 and £70,000 a year, and you don't have that background. Sometimes you might have to start off as a QA admin assistant, okay? And that's a kind of an administration-based position whereby and even then sometimes experience, but you can start at the very bottom and then perhaps put yourself through what does a quality administrator need, what skills would be a lead auditor, whether it be a NEBOSH certificate, these sort of things. You look at what that is, and over time, put yourself through these qualifications. And to be fair, some companies will support you through that, but sometimes it's about looking at rather than look at the top rung of the ladder, look at the bottom and think, okay, well, I want to get to here. What does that path look like? And it's not always as simple as, you can go straight in there with the transferable skills if you need specific qualification things. But sometimes you get the opportunity with the business to go in at the very bottom level and grow your skills, be known, get the UK experience, and then either be in your own personal time or whether it be through company support, gain more qualifications, gain more experience, and work your way up from that way from the bottom up. Yeah, you don't want to come across as too senior, sort of thing. Yeah.
So, when in the line of administrative work, qualifications necessarily aren't too essential. It's more down to the experience that you hold. And I only know that because that's the line of work that I support with. So, though you may have a master's, that's brilliant. Absolutely. And I'm not saying to remove it from your CV. I don't think it's going to do any detriment with regards to that. But what they would be looking within an administrative sense is that you have experience doing admin positions. So if you don't have that, that's when it then becomes tricky and your CV may not be considered, is because you maybe don't hold that experience at the time. But again, it's kind of what we mentioned earlier. In your personal statement, you can say, look, I appreciate I maybe hold XYZ, but I'm really looking to start entry level and work my way up.
So much. And on that road, talking about support, we're going into the next phase of today's program, and we have none other than Maury from Energy Insider, and Maury will be sharing with us a few things about. Please, can we put our hands together for Maury?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm here to talk about an educational platform that teaches you about the energy industry and the career opportunities within it. Now, this is to help both the industry and individuals understand specific roles, because the energy industry is a vast industry. It's got lots of different specialisms in them. In terms like engineer, technician, that covers an array of specialisms. And I think that is the important area that we want to help people understand so they can identify specific jobs, get sufficient amount of knowledge to know how to apply for them, and understand where their skills are connected with those specific jobs. Now, at the beginning of our journey of putting this educational platform together, we started with offshore wind. So on the back deck of vessels, filming the installation of floating wind turbines, documenting the process, and having a project engineer from the project explain it through in plain English and the careers and the opportunities within it. And that's how we're going to do it. We're going between all the different sectors and recording where we can, the operations, and identifying specific areas that have a high demand of skills, showing it to you so you have a better understanding of that. And then we package it together so you can view it in one place, like a Netflix of energy industry informational content. That's what we're working on. I'll just show you a little trailer we've got. I don't know where to point this thing. There we go. This is our trailer.
This is how you attract people. And it's a good project to be part of. It's good for people who want to learn and get into the industry.
David Moore, Portland.
So it's very critical that the A-frame lifts. Section 2, the toe. Hi, my name is David Morton, your Energy Insider.
All right, Energy Insider. That's the format. We're making it much more exciting and entertaining so it can attract younger workforce. It's in universities, in colleges, and in schools, teaching them about the energy industry in a way that's attractive, interesting, and entertaining to also retain the workforce within Aberdeen as well and our local region. In this process, we're interviewing lots of different people from different companies about specific jobs. Now, at this early stage, I can't come here and tell you or run through all these specific jobs. That's not why I'm here. It's just that the synergies between why you are here to learn about specific jobs and our mission to document that and then deliver that to you is the reason why I'm here. So I'm going to open the floor up to any questions or any suggestions or any particular areas of interest that you have, because there might be some knowledge that I have that I can pass on to you. So I'm just going to open up to the floor. Do you have any questions? All right. Yeah, nice.
Somebody mentioned. Okay. Someone mentioned some time ago that he works offshore, and I think he said he was a kitchen assistant or something.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, he was well paid. I was like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
And he said he had to take some medicals and did a certificate and everything. And I was like, what do you actually need to go offshore? And he said, not much. Just take the certificate and do the medicals and you're fine. I'm like, interesting. So, what kind of jobs are available in the energy industry? Because I see lots of ado about green jobs right now, and people here have different backgrounds. Some people project management, somebody's in finance, somebody's in IT, and everything. So, what kind of jobs are popping up?
So, I think there's a couple of questions in there, right? So, I think the question of what jobs are there, I'm not going to cover all of that because there's a lot, but I'll tell you about my career, right? So, just to give you an insight in how there's lots of jobs within a particular specialism, for example. My first job in the oil and gas industry was a pipeline pre-commissioning area. Now, that's a big area within oil and gas, pipeline pre-commissioning, and within that, we were the pipeline pigging and testing operators, essentially, right? So, what is pigging and pigging and testing, literally pumping, let's say, a device down a pipeline to the other end and bringing it out the other end to check to see, well, there's a few reasons. One, you need to test the strength of a new pipeline to make sure that it's strong enough to handle the oil or gas that's going to be in it afterwards. So they do that by filling it with water, pressure testing it, and then they need to get the water out because water is very corrosive and you don't want to have any water in your pipeline for too long. So the entire division, thousands of people, thousands and thousands across the world, all do this very one specific thing. And that's an example of what a specialized job would be. Now, within that one operation, you're going to have lots of different guys with similar skills, but they'll be doing slightly different things. So some might be operating pumps. Now, this pump might be the size of this room, right? Or maybe not the whole room, but like maybe sections of this room. There'll be many of those. And they'll be like container size so they can ship them onto boats and around, right? So imagine lots of different pumps around. You'll have to set up all the different high pressure equipment wherever you end up being in the world in order to do that. And these are the types of skills in there, understanding what these are, fitting them together, knowing the safety around that. And then you're going to have to pressure test your own equipment to make sure that's okay. You're going to need to understand how do you test and then prove that what you've done is correct. Like that is a specialism within it. Now, and there are thousands of these specialisms. It's a specific service that you're providing to an oil and gas operator to help them with one of their problems. Now, most of the jobs are within the supply chain. So when you think of these big companies like your BP, Shells, your Exxon Mobils, they're the operators that they run the field, or it's their oil, or they're operating that. But the supply chain are all the different service companies that help them achieve that goal. Now, it could be the construction side. So there'll be people come to build the rigs at the very beginning or laying the infrastructure. There's many different companies involved in that. It could be the maintenance, it's the inspection, it could be the catering crew that's going out in order to make sure that everybody's got food. And there's a high level of safety within everything. So within every organization, there's going to be HSE professionals that make sure that they're at a particular standard, a particular very high standard in the oil and gas industry and energy industry. That's why that's a specialism. They might be looking for understanding or awareness of a specific area that they're going to, if you're going to be an HSE professional and you're going to work in let's say it was what I was just talking about there, the hydro testing and the pigging area, so pipeline services essentially, then having awareness around that and then understanding you're understanding fully how HSE works and all the different risk assessments and things that they need to do in order to reach 9001, 15001, 45001. All these things might mean nothing to you just now, but if you're in that field, it's very important. Right, so I went on about one area, right? So I've just now educated you on a little bit on one little area there. So let's say transition, right? I wanted to work in offshore wind. So let's say you've got some skills, you want to work in a completely new area, and you want to find out where the jobs are. It's very difficult to understand. It's very difficult to find that information out. So I wanted to work in offshore wind. I had maybe 8 years of experience in pipeline pre-commissioning, it's called. I wanted to work in offshore wind. You think I would just get a job really quickly. But there's just a divide, and nobody in offshore wind, they didn't understand what I did, and I didn't understand what they were doing. It's to find those specific services that's within that and understanding these services. So that's I'd say my advice to you is to learn of one specific service that that may seem nothing, like on the big picture, it may seem nothing, but there's a whole industry within that. There's companies with thousands and thousands of people that do this one little thing. And it might just be testing that pipeline. It might just be in drilling where they put a plug down a drill pipe. And you might not know what that is yet. But you should learn and get awareness of what these things are because it's meaningful. And you just knowing a little bit of information about that before you go into your interview is gonna help you a long way. Hold on, I'm just checking my notes here just to see if there's one that's out here. So when I was transitioning to offshore wind, one of the biggest issues that I had was I managing to communicate that my skills were going to be useful in what they do, right? So that after lots of effort and pushing, I eventually got an opportunity where I got to go out on a job on something called a soil plug removal tool, right? I'd never heard of it before in my life, right? So eventually I managed to get out with my prior experience because we're really desperate. And I'm out in this job and I'm seeing this soil plug removal tool. I'm seeing all these different amazing types of jobs and services that people were doing. So there was different crews, specialized crews, all doing different things. For example, there's those big tripod looking things for offshore wind turbines. Have you seen them before? They're big yellow. Have I got any on here? No. Hold on. See these things? Right. The job of putting one of them into the sea requires probably dozens of different companies and lots of different job opportunities within that. So my advice to you is to learn one specific area before you go for a job, so you have a lot to talk about that specific area, and then to go in. That's really going to give you a huge boost, because you just go in and say, I'm hardworking. You know, you're not going to pique their interest. I'm just going to open up the floor again. Sorry, I know I'm holding a microphone, but I like to hear your questions. Yeah.
So now, great stuff you have here. Most people here are international people. We're new in the UK.
Yeah.
First, how long will it take you to learn one of those things? I know you've got a platform where people can now learn.
Yeah.
How long will it take to learn? And then how long typically, so let's say you have a younger one that is a novice, complete novice. How long would you say, if you do this for this period of time, you should be able to land a job? Timeline, can you?
You know what? This is just the platform is providing awareness. Now, you don't need to learn. It's about, you'll learn on the job. So you will learn on the job. At the moment, so when I started out, it was almost a joke where it's like, how do you get a job offshore? You just need to know somebody, right? It's because it's very difficult to just apply to get a job, because you had such low knowledge and awareness of what they were doing. That's like, you're like, hey, I'd like to work for you. Yeah, what do we do? I'm like, I don't know, I'll learn. You know, and it's like, you had lots of people like that you almost needed somebody who liked you enough to be like, you know what, I'll put your CV in for this guy. And it was literally like that. Like that's how it was, or at least that's the reputation of how it was about 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago. It's changed a lot. It's a lot different now, but that was the reputation. There's a reason for that. And it's because there was this barrier of knowledge between people entering the industry. So that's the area that I'm trying to help with. But for the moment, until I have that released in order to show you, you're going to have to do the research yourself. If it's in terms of you don't need to learn the job. They will teach you the job. Most of these types of specialized services, you're not going to find, it's not like you're going to learn that somewhere on a different type of job. It's very specific. But the more you're aware of that, the better it's going to be for you. Does that helpful at all? Is it? Okay, I'm just making sure.
Yeah. Should I go ahead or not?
Yeah.
Okay, so what kind of skills? So now my background, I have worked as a tech person. I have worked in different places, skills that are not necessarily related to what might be used on them. Now, so what kind of skills do you think, if I were to create a CV right now, let's say I've started learning and then I have some knowledge of how things operate and then I need to put forward a CV.
Yeah.
What kind of skill would I be putting in the CV?
Okay, well, that's very specific to the job that you're going to apply for. Like super specific. Like if you're applying for a job, don't just think that one CV is good for everybody. Like if I was applying for anything, then I would make sure it was tailored to that one person. Like what's in it for them? Because they want to find you. They want to open the CV and be like, yes, that's the person. So you need to tick all the boxes. It shouldn't just be general. It shouldn't be, I do a bunch of stuff that might be useful. It's like, I do this, I see you do that. Like I've noticed on, like, your company does this. I used to do this. It's very similar. I've got those skills for that. Enough to get invited in. You know, if it's a CV related time. And the other area is like, because I was listening to the interview section before. Now, most of my jobs that I've got, if I have been through some sort of story, because you can have an interview and they're like, okay, that's nice. You tell a story that just makes you stand out a little bit. Tell the story of why you're good at that particular thing. I used to work in that place where I achieved this thing and it was great. And then in that little story, you've told quite a few things. I'm skilled at that. Other people recognize that as social proof, right? Social proof's big. So I was in this job and then I got selected to do this because I was particularly good at that. And I noticed that you've got it in your company. You know, that's an area that I think that's going to be really useful for you. And I've demonstrated that there's a story within the interview process as well. So I've gone off topic a little bit there. So what skills? Sorry. I'm trying to be specific here, but you really needs to be specific to a specific job and company. Really look at the supply chain. So what do I mean by supply chain? If you want to work in renewable energy, right? Who wants to work in renewable energy related stuff? Anyone? Or is everybody focused on oil and gas? No, it's okay. I mean, yeah? Yes. So I was going to give you a resource, yeah? Because there's lots of different, if you went to Deep Wind, our local renewable energy cluster, so what that means is, within all the renewable energy services for the energy industry, there's a cluster. And the Aberdeen-based or northeast of Scotland cluster is called Deep Wind. Now, on Deep Wind, you will see a list of all the different members of this cluster. Now, these are all companies that provide services to renewable energy related infrastructure, right? It'll be like 700 companies on there, right? And you know that they're working towards offshore wind, and you can go through them and find out about them, right? And I would follow that route, because then you could talk about the renewable energy piece when you apply to them. Deep Wind, that's our local one. There's ones in different regions within the UK as well. Sorry, over to you.
Yeah, I think you've answered what I was about to
Yeah?
ask. Related to renewable energy. So what I would just add to that is, what's the ratio of the opportunities between oil and gas and renewable energy? Because I know the world is transitioning from oil and gas now to renewable energy. What would you advise someone that has never done both oil and gas and renewable energy? Where will you like the person, or where will you suggest the person to focus on?
Do you know, I think if you worked in oil and gas, I don't think you'd struggle to get a job in renewable energy. I think right now, it's the skill. That's the skilled workforce. You'll learn a lot, especially for the offshore energy space. It's the same almost anywhere in the world. It's in terms of how when the way things are done, the way the procedures are, and the safety standards are very high. And if you worked in an industry or an organization that's within oil and gas, they'll know that there's a recognized standard that you're working to. So you'll find it easier to move into other jobs. So if I would say, if you're not picky about it, and if it's whatever one's easier to do so, I would say with oil and gas, they're definitely struggling to get the right number of people right now for a lot of their projects. That's what I'm hearing in the industry. There's like a big skills shortage of people. So they're hiring people. They're looking to hire people. And there's a lot of companies that are relatively unknown. So if you type in oil and gas company, you're probably not going to find them. You're going to need to look for these, what's called supply chain companies. You're going to need to do some work in there. All right, I'll hand over to someone else. Hey.
Good afternoon. So, I mean, I'm just going to make a comment, basically. So, for me, I've worked in the oil and gas industry as a geoscientist.
Uh-huh.
And I've tried looking into, I'm highly interested in the energy,
offshore wind. Yeah.
Well, offshore wind, geothermal, CCUS, basically. And I realized that, to your last comment, I realized that sometimes, for example, in geotechnical roles, they're looking for some specific, there's a wish list in most of all the jobs. And for example, they say you should be able to interpret seismic, geohazard assessments, do some piling or some sort of things.
Yeah.
I've interpreted seismic for the bulk of my career, but for oil and gas applications. So I guess, again, it's how do you be able to say, okay, look, I don't have direct experience, but, it's still the same concept of geophysics, interpreting seismic. So how do you get across to the recruiter to say, look, I cannot fulfill your wish list in terms of experience, direct experience, but I have this set of skills.
Okay. So in geotechnical, I have a bit of a small experience in geotechnical, right? Because we work with a geotechnical company. And in case anyone's wondering about the jobs in that area, well, let's answer the specific question first, right? So because I know it was a comment, but there's a bit of a question in there. What specific question are you asking there?
So the specific question is, how do you get across to a recruiter saying, look, I have this wish list of skills.
Yeah, I've got the skills. I've got the skills. Take me on.
But not direct experience.
Okay.
In the offshore wind.
Oh yeah.
Because a lot of times they want direct experience
with offshore wind.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and there's going to be a bit of that for this now. That's offshore wind. People are just looking for offshore wind, but there's not enough people that have done it.
Exactly.
Right. So it's absolutely, and the amount of geotechnical work that it's rapidly increasing. Right, because in case anyone doesn't know, the geotechnical work within offshore wind is when you drill, so lots of drilling and sampling, because you're going to need to build something that's like maybe 20,000 tons and put it on the seabed. You need to make sure that the seabed is strong enough to handle all that on it. So you need to drill into that and take samples out in order to discover that. Now, within geotechnical, so just to go over the jobs, just in case anyone's interested, is that apart from this, like senior management and engineers, you've got the geotechnical, and you've got geotechnical engineers, lab technicians, you've got subsea tech quite often because equipment goes to the bottom of the sea often. So you'll have mechanics, electrical technicians, and hydraulics people that's on that as well. And you're going to need data like analytics people because you're going to be taking out these samples and you're going to be bringing it onto the deck, and you're going to analyze that and then make a report from that too. So those are the different jobs in there. How would you communicate that? Not 100% sure. I don't know. I don't have the answer for that one. I would just keep asking. Yeah. Yeah. So it's like you will adapt yourself to get offshore. Like the goal is to get offshore because you'd like a certain level of income. So that's a goal. It's not like you're following a slow path.
Maybe some non-technical jobs. So for instance,
like the catering guys.
But I mean similar.
Yeah, no, the stewards, right? I mean they're still skilled as well. You might need to learn it because they're often called stewards.
Yeah, but easy to learn or easy to pick up.
Yeah,
skills.
or easy to demonstrate that there's similar skills, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, if you've worked for an organization that's, let's say, been involved with cooking or because there's like in hotel trade, for example, then, I think you'd be an attractive candidate because I've got 2 minutes. Yeah, no worries. Do we have any other questions? What are the different jobs? Like, give me a second. Yeah. I was thinking, well, you know what? I'll move off that and I'll have a think over there and then I'll come back to you. I'll see if I can write down a list or something. Yeah. Yep. Good. Yeah.
My brain thinks 60 actually. So as we're talking, I went back and come back now. I've checked your website stuff, massive crazy stuff, bad videos, all of that. Can you give us a favor such a way that if any of those jobs pop up, just send us an email. I promise my guys we are allowed to see them. Can that work?
What is it in terms of the jobs and
those opportunities? Because you have
Right. As we upload.
Yeah. So is there any way we can
like a sneak peek?
Yeah.
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 I hear what you mean. I mean, we can figure that out.
The reason why I said that was that Edinburgh and Glasgow. Something I've seen and which has happened that when you trained students, just trained students, because of the massive formation out there in Edinburgh and Glasgow, people just carry that bag and go. But I felt that if we have all of these opportunities somehow, people can get jobs, stay here, all of that. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, what he's trying to say is, are you going to give us the opportunity if you have, like you said, you've said it so many times that you're not ready to release some type of information because it's not ready yet. You said, yeah. So we are asking now, once those opportunities are ready, are you going to inform us about it so that we can also take part of it?
Absolutely. So just to confirm, we're creating content about jobs to show specific job roles and common job roles and skills within different aspects of the energy industry, with the activities and the tasks and the assets, for example, like rigs and boats and what's going on there. That's what, and also onshore as well. Okay. So there's going to be an element of hydrogen and offshore wind and oil and gas. So we're doing a holistic view there. So what you're asking is for me, if I'm going to let you know, then yeah, absolutely. Okay. If let you see some in advance, like maybe, yeah, yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Do we have any other questions for Maury? Okay. Can we all put our hands together for Maury? Thank you so much, Maury from Energy.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Okay. It seems it's getting really hot and hot. Some people are interested in working in offshore. We all know the motivation, the money. Yes, we understand, Yeah, so we don't mind transitioning into steward, kitchen something, just to, understand, make it complete. So yes, thank you so much. I hope we picked one or two very important things there. For me, I am particularly impressed by the fact that in such industries, you necessarily do not need to have like 10 years experience, as long as you're willing to learn, and it aligns with your own values. The opportunities are there and you can always take advantage of it. So on that note, we have, I believe, our last speaker for the day. I like when we start, on a high and we end on a high. Please, I don't have your bio here. Okay, awesome. So please, can we put our hands together? For Carol, yes, I saw it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carol Sinclair from the Engineering Construction Industry Training Board, so ECITB. So thank you very much for having me here today. I've got 15 minutes to speak to you about careers in engineering construction and how that's going to evolve with the work and the challenge ahead with net zero. So I'm happy to take questions as we go along, or we can do Q&A at the end as well. So here we go. First up, Engineering Construction Industry Training Board. What does that mean? So we're an arm's length government body. We've been set up to make sure that there is a suitably skilled, qualified, competent workforce to work in engineering construction. So we work with government, we work with education providers, training providers, and employers, all working together to make sure that we can meet those aims. So the next thing is, what on earth is engineering construction? So it's the cornerstone of our process and energy industries. So wherever there's a product being processed and the generation of power, that is part of engineering construction. So when Murray was speaking about the supply chain companies, a lot of those companies are in scope to ECITB. So I've got a little video here. If I can get that to work, I'm not sure. No, there we go. Oh, well, I can tell you all about it by myself. So if you think about the design, the installation, the engineering, the repair, maintenance, testing, and decommissioning of any plant or site where there is product being processed. So, I mean, Aberdeen, oil and gas is, that's a stronghold of engineering construction in the local area. However, we're seeing a transition in that makeup of the industry as a lot of the companies that we work with are moving into the renewable energies industries. And we're seeing a lot more decommissioning in oil and gas as well. So anybody who's involved in those areas of design, installation, repair, maintenance, testing, decommissioning, engineering, construction. So a major cornerstone of the British economy, and also doing work internationally as well. So the sectors that we cover. So clearly, stepping outside the door here, we can see Petrofac, we can see Worley. Along the road, we've got PD and MS, all in scope to the engineering construction industry, all involved in oil and gas, but also increasingly starting to change their focus and getting involved with those renewable industries. So we've got a great concentration in and around Aberdeen. So while engineering construction happens right across GB, we do have a good concentration of companies, and there's about 20 or 30 companies that we work with in the Aberdeen area involved with engineering construction. Chemicals, pharmaceuticals, so not so close to home for Aberdeen, but down Grangemouth, Teesside, Middlesbrough, across in the northwest of England. So that manufacture of chemicals and pharmaceuticals for domestic and international use. Food and drink, so everything from the production of biscuits to beer. The people that are doing looking after those operations and sites are involved in engineering construction. The renewables industry, so we're seeing a huge change now. So we're seeing offshore wind. So there's a great time when you could be standing at Aberdeen Bay and you could see the oil rig in one hand and the offshore wind turbines. So we're starting to see the changing face of engineering construction. I was at a presentation by Paul DeLue of Robert Gordon University a couple of weeks ago. So within the energy industry, offshore at the moment, dominated by oil and gas workforce, but we're going to see that sort of tipping over the next sort of 10, 15 years, where we're going to see an increasing volume of offshore wind activity, hydrogen activity in our offshore industry. So, things are starting to change. So there's new opportunities and things, exciting challenges to get involved with. Power industry, nuclear industry, we're just nuclear decommissioning in Scotland, but there's new nuclear power being built down at Hinkley Point C and Sizewell in east of England. So that's making up about 20% of our energy in the UK at the moment. And the water industry, again, the supply of fresh water, sewerage, so on and so forth. And again, the skills from that industry will be becoming more and more important within as the hydrogen industry evolves as well, because there'll be a lot of water processing obviously required and those skills within the hydrogen production as well. So careers in engineering construction, what sort of job roles are available? So there's a whole host of things. I mean, obviously the engineering role. So, electrical engineering, whenever I go to forums and we're speaking about skills and what skills are going to be required in the future, electrical is always the thing that's up at the top, but the instrumentation, the mechanical engineering, particularly a skill shortage that we see coming up will be for the design engineering. So if you think about the new carbon capture plants that need to be built, the new hydrogen work that needs to be built, so design engineering is going to be required for all of those new things. The retrofit of existing infrastructure for carbon capture, the new pipelines that are going to be required, and the retrofit of the existing networks. So a whole host of engineering and technician skills required. As you can imagine, all of the work that we're doing is very project driven. So the requirement for project controls, project engineers, people looking after those projects, driving them forward, making sure that they're delivering, that's going to be of increasing demand across the engineering construction sector as well. So, you know, a whole host of things happening. Within Aberdeen, ECITB, we run a wind turbine scholarship programme. So it's a 2-year programme running at NESCOL, where we support young people to spend 2 years at college doing a combined electrical mechanical level HNC type entry, so that they can go and work in the wind turbine industry. So what we're trying to do is maybe sort of prime the market a little bit. So where employers, certainly over COVID and with the oil and gas downturn, there was less investment in graduate programmes, there was less investment in apprenticeship programmes. So ECITB were able to step in and start priming those programmes and making investments in those areas to try and make sure that that skills pipeline and those opportunities are maintained for the industry, and keeping that going now. So the scholarship programmes have proven very popular. So while we brought that in for COVID-19, we're actually continuing that. So a whole range of engineers, you know, structural engineers, you know, be required for that, you know, the construction of new plant and process systems for hydrogen, carbon capture and retrofit. So yeah, we get a taster there for the different types of careers available. So engineering, construction and net zero, I've been speaking a little bit about that. So in terms of energy transition, it's here, it's happening. You know, we're in a drive to seek new power sources, to increase hydrogen power, to increase onshore and offshore wind power, hydropower, so on. So we really need to make sure that the workforce has the skills to be able to transition from traditional engineering construction industries into the new ones. So I'm spending a lot of time speaking with employers about, you know, hydrogen industry. How does that, what are the different skills that are required for working in hydrogen as opposed to in oil and gas? You know, and actually 95% it's there, the existing skills, the skills that you have, the people that are already in the workforce, the people that are coming through college and university system, you have the skills and knowledge. It's just applying them in a new context. So you were asking about is it yourself asking about the geotechnology? So I suppose then it's about that, you know, what Skills Development Scotland likes to refer to as the meta skills. So showing that you're adaptable, showing that you can apply your skills and knowledge in a new context, and that you're up for that challenge and exploring new opportunities, and being that, you know, innovator, and being able to apply your thinking in a new sector and industry area. Being curious, that seems to be a phrase that the employers are quite keen on just now. They like curiosity and working in a collaborative way. So certainly for delivering net zero projects, the way projects have been delivered in traditional engineering sectors, it's been quite a kind of adversarial type of contracting mechanism, where there's quite a bit of man marking between the operator and the clients, and having to I suppose the operators wanting the cheapest job, and the contractors have to try and make their margin. Now, what we need to be trying to work towards is more collaborative based working, where everybody's working to the same single goal and everybody can win. So that collaborative working and being in a frame of mind to be open to working collaboratively is absolutely a key for going forward. So what are ECITB doing in that space then? So we're working with government, we're working with the Green Jobs Delivery Group, we're working with academia, we're working with the training providers, and we're working with employers to make sure that we can start understanding what does that demand, what do the workforce demand requirements look like, so that we can speak to groups like yourself, we can speak to potential workforce and encourage them to enthuse about the oil and gas industry, about the renewables industry, the chemicals, pharmaceuticals, to say there are opportunities here are where they are, and try and make sure that we can be channeling people in the right directions that work for them, and provide those access points to get into industry. So I spoke about engineering construction, and we're in Aberdeen and we're focusing here. So Murray had spoken about the offshore deep wind cluster, and we've obviously clearly got an oil and gas cluster up in the Aberdeen area as well. For net zero, we're speaking about decarbonisation clusters. So there are 6 of them across Britain. So we've got in Scotland, we've got that sort of Grangemouth cluster linked with the Acorn project in Storega, and linking into Aberdeen, Peterhead. So that's the work that's happening up in Scotland. In the northeast of England, we've got the Teesside and Humberside clusters. And so Teesside are one of the government's track 1 industrial clusters. So they're pushing forward with their carbon capture plans, their hydrogen plans. So in each of these clusters, we're going to see new build hydrogen, new build carbon capture pipelines and facilities for being able to facilitate carbon capture, and then the pipelines to get that to offshore storage space, or to shipping, to transport, to store in other parts, in Morecambe Bay or up off of St Fergus. So we've got the other clusters, HyNet in the northwest, South Wales Industrial Cluster in Southampton. So, while engineering construction's happening across the industry, across the country, we do have heavy clusters of activities in various parts of the country. So some people will be working in offices in Aberdeen. You could be working in an office in Aberdeen doing engineering design procurement for projects internationally anywhere across the world for oil and gas. Similarly down in London in the southeast. Or you could be working on site every day and having to work and live next to sites such as St Fergus up at Peterhead. So, and some people be travelling all across the country and being home-based, being in offices. So lots of different ways of working now, and I think COVID's kind of really opened that up in opportunities for home working, hybrid working, office working, site-based working. Obviously a little less flexibility. If you're site-based, you have to be site-based, you can't do that from home. So overall, I think engineering construction, we've got a massive challenge because we have to maintain all of the work that we're already doing in oil and gas, in chemicals, in pharmaceuticals, in water industry, in wind industry. But we've also, on top of that, we've got that huge infrastructure challenge posed to us by net zero. So we need to get the hydrogen infrastructure up and going. We need to get the carbon capture and storage infrastructure up and going. New energy networks. So, to be able to have, the ambition is to have the world's first net zero industrial cluster by 2040. Scotland to be net zero by 2045, the rest of the UK net zero by 2050. It's a huge challenge, quite exciting. There's going to be a huge engineering challenge, huge technical innovation challenge, huge project management challenge. So I really hope that's something that excites, inspires and encourages people to get involved in engineering construction. And so happy to take your questions. Please engage with our social media, and happy to take any thoughts from the floor.
Do we have questions?
Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation. You actually covered the full value chain of the energy industry from transitioning industry from all the way from engineering down to nuclear. My question is very simple. Especially your last slide actually captured a lot of things I wanted to, or I was pondering about. There's a lot of projects going on in the UK today under construction, as you mentioned, the Acorn in the northeast of Scotland, all the way to HyNet on the Viking, and a lot of all those projects. I actually went to Sea Green project, and no one even knows about the Sea Green project, and it's going to light up about 1.6 million homes. And I was going to ask, from the upskilling point of view perspective, how do we, do you have like a repository of, of information, or a repository where we can get skills, maybe short courses or certifications or apprenticeships or internships, because a lot of information is scattered everywhere. And so, for example, you have a GIS specialist. If, I want to be certified or I want to become a drone operator, an industrial drone operator, which a lot of people, need, especially for all these projects. How do I go about it? How do I navigate? Is there like a resource for aggregating?
So, in a general sense, I absolutely feel your pain. I've been, for 1 year or nearly a year, I've been in a net zero project manager role and trying to learn as much as I can about net zero. And it's just the amount of information, reports, research, it's overwhelming. It really is. And I've recently come to the stage of, actually, I just can't learn all of this right now. But what I can do is build up my network so that if I don't know it, I know somebody who does. So I think that's where I'm trying to focus at the moment, but also trying to pull together those resources because, as you say, it's overwhelming. Where do we find it? Where is that sort of central trusted knowledge hub? So I think the likes of the work that Murray's doing is a great start. And, when we're able to see that resource and be able to see, right, that's what that job looks like in oil and gas, and this is what it looks like in renewables, and starting to be able to make that translation between the two to realise, well, actually, the core skill set, very similar. It's just those little add-ons. So that's a generic sense. Firstly, just the ECITB website, if you're looking for drone training, we're a standard setting body, and we develop training standards as well. So actually for drone training, ECITB have approved training providers, and we have providers in Aberdeen who deliver drone training. So if that's something that's of interest, but a whole host. So we've got over 200 approved training providers operating across UK and internationally, delivering training to ECITB standards. And the great thing about that is then it's recognised by employers, it's transferable. We're doing quite a bit of work on a piece called Connected Competence. So that's looking at craft and technician skills and looking at, right, what are the core craft and technician skills? So if I want to be a mechanical technician, what are the core elements? What do I need to do? What makes me technically competent? And getting the employers to buy into that, so that when you say I have my connected competence digital badges in here, it's immediately recognisable across all of the employers. So we're getting that established here now in oil and gas industry, and that's starting to be, we're getting the client companies signing up to that, so that when they're then doing their tendering, they want their supply chain to be saying we're working with connected competence. And then we get that into the wind industry, and then we negotiate to get that into the nuclear industry, which makes that workforce so much, that transferability is so much easier. But it's work in progress. So I don't have any quick, easy answers, I'm afraid. Great websites that I've been tapping into, Carbon Capture and Storage Association. Murray already referenced the deep wind, yes. The Aberdeen Renewable Energy Group, and again through these you can get the employers as well. So ECITB, you'll be able to access our levy, our register of employers. So we've got 300 employers in scope to ECITB. So through there you're finding another 300 employers. Anyway, I'm going a bit off piste with the question that you asked. Super.